Hello, this is Diaz and a new author's story for my channel Russian Revenge Story. Enjoy listening. Marina looked around nervously as she walked towards the store. She kept counting the change in her hand. She was worried that she wouldn't have enough for bread and milk. There were still 2 days left until payday, and the money, as it turned out, was almost gone. Stopping at the entrance, the girl looked again at the money she was holding in her hand and went inside the store. It wasn't that she was ashamed to show off the change. She just didn't want to look like a laughingstock if it suddenly turned out that it wasn't enough. She didn't have to choose for long, and Marina bought the cheapest loaf of bread. Then she went to the shelf with dairy products and, looking at the prices, nervously bit her lip. She only had enough for a small package of cheap milk, which was only half a liter. Remembering her cat, the girl decided that they would somehow get by these 2 days. With the selected products, she headed towards the checkout, clutching the previously counted coins in her fist so as not to hold up the line. But then, either on purpose or by accident, one of the customers nudged her with his elbow. The change quickly spilled out of Marina's hand. The cashier, seeing how the girl was collecting coins from the floor, said bluntly, "What brought you to my head? Now I'll have to wait half a day, and then I'll have to count them for you." At that moment, the store manager appeared. "What's going on here? Why is there a line?" Pointing at the girl, the cashier almost shouted, "Yes, she's the one holding everyone up. She came here with her kopecks and trembled over each one." The manager silently leaned over the girl and began to help her collect the coins, and then his attention was drawn to the bracelet on her arm. Putting his palm on it, he quietly asked, "Where did you get this thing? Maybe you stole it. Tell me honestly. I won't call the police." Marina cried and quickly pulled her hand away. "This is a memory of my mother. How dare you say that? You have no heart at all. You are ready to peck at a person in some line." Raising her shoulders, the director said, "Let's go to my office. You can tell me everything there." The cashier wanted to say something, but in response she saw the director's thunderous look. Immediately collecting milk and bread in a bag, she put everything under the table. In his office, the director asked the same question again. "Where did you get this thing?" Marina, realizing that they would not leave her alone, shed a tear. "This was given to me by my mother when I turned years old. She told me to take care of it and never sell it. Now my mother is not around, and I live alone. I keep this gift as a memory of better times." The director stepped aside and said, "Okay, I believe you, but keep in mind that stealing someone else's is a sin. And here's what. When you leave the office, take your groceries from the cashier. You don't have to pay for them. Consider that I gave you a gift too." Marina looked him straight in the eye in surprise and asked, "You are such a kind person, but I feel somehow awkward, because I don't even know your name." From embarrassment or shame at his behavior, the director got red spots on his face. With a tremor in his voice, he replied, "My name is Nikolai Vasilievich, and since it turned out this way, then introduce yourself too." Smiling, the girl replied, "And I'm Marina. That's the name my grandmother gave me. My mother wanted to call me Luda, but that's fine too." The director also softened his anger to mercy. "Great. It was nice to meet you. And now I have to work. If you need anything, come by. We'll give you a significant discount." Marina thanked the products again and left the office. The cashier looked at her with displeasure but said nothing. She only gave her a bag of milk and bread. Already on the street, the girl exhaled a little. "Well, today, it's as if fate is deliberately throwing me trials." Looking back, Marina playfully slapped her forehead with her hand and went home. Her beloved cat was waiting for her in the apartment. "Hello, my dear. Why are you so sad?" I'll pour you some milk now. We got it for free today. One kind store director decided to make a gift. While she was pouring milk for the cat, Marina kept looking at the bracelet. The director's question about where she got it just wouldn't leave her head. Nikolai Vasilievich behaved somehow strangely. It seemed like they weren't acquaintances, but it felt like they'd known each other for many years. This day became a turning point in her life. After all, the director didn't just ask about the bracelet for no reason. It seemed like he saw a familiar thing. And what's interesting is that he didn't bother to find out the details, but calmly let her go home. Nikolai Vasilievich, after Marina left his office, made one call. He dialed the number of his old friend, who used to work in the police. Hearing a familiar voice, he said, "How many years? How many years? You probably became a long liver. You haven't let anyone know about you for months. And if you've started stinking now, then there must be some urgency?" Nikolai sighed heavily and replied, "You're right. I can't solve one problem without your help. Or rather, I need to find out all the information about a very pretty girl." My friend laughed and said, "You're something. You'll soon be exchanging 50 kopecks and still there." "I don't know you, Kolya. Have you decided to become a ladies' man?" To put his friend in his place, Nikolai shouted loudly, "Stop talking nonsense. It's not about love. I just need to know who her parents are, if they are alive, and who she lives with now. Although I know about this, the girl said that she has no one. But anyway, try to gather as much information as possible. Her name is Marina, and I'll send you the footage from the store's video cameras later." It was hard for Nikolai to refuse, and his friend promised that he would get valuable information as soon as possible. The bracelet on the girl's hand reminded him of the past that he had tried so hard to forget. It wouldn't be fair to say that it upset him in any way, but what Marina told him about her mother made him a little wary. Nikolai was sure that his first love had thrown away the gift right after the dramatic breakup. However, now he had doubts that he wanted to check. There had been no news from his friend for several days, and Nikolai decided to call him again. He heard his irritated voice on the other end of the line. "Why are you so restless? I'm not a detective agency, it takes time. And by the way, you're distracting me from important matters with your requests." "Okay, I managed to dig up something. Your girlfriend Marina now lives alone in a 2-room apartment not far from your store. She has financial difficulties. I'll send you the address in a message. You can go and talk to her yourself. 3 years ago, her mother passed away. She was seriously ill. It was difficult to contact the hospital, but a certain doctor secretly said that the woman, lately, was only holding on by her word of honor, despite the expensive treatment. Nikolai guessed why Marina did not tell the truth about her mother. It seems that it was unpleasant for her. And why stir up such information if you have to cry later? Having thanked his friend for the valuable information, Nikolai began to think about how he could get to know Marina better, and he came up with a plan. He needed to track her down on the street and, as if by accident, approach her. So she won't dislike anything, and at the same time there will be an opportunity to have a heart-to-heart talk. 2 days later, Marina suddenly walked past his store. Seeing her through the window, he put on his jacket and went outside. So that she wouldn't notice, Nikolai quickened his pace and then lightly brushed her shoulder. The girl turned around and almost dropped her purse. "Oh, you scared me. I was thinking and didn't notice that I ran into you." Nikolai extended his hand to her and said, "I just saw you walking down the street with a sad face. I decided that I needed to come up to you and cheer you up. How would you feel about going to a cafe? Just don't think anything bad. You're old enough to be my daughter." Well, he said the very word he was most afraid of. Marina, oddly enough, did not push him away and accepted the invitation. Half an hour later, they were sitting at a table by the window. Nikolai urgently needed to find out how that bracelet had gotten to her. In order not to push, he started from afar. As I understand it, you don't have a mother. And what about your father? Does he communicate with you? Marina shook her head. No, because I've never seen him. In any case, my mother never said anything about him when she was alive. Nikolai felt a pang in his heart. Could it be that she's a daughter, and I treated her like that? But these were just guesses. An examination was needed, and to conduct it, he needed DNA samples. As soon as coffee and dessert were brought. Help yourself. I love sweets. I don't know about you, but my mouth waters at the sight of cream cakes. Marina pulled the saucer with dessert closer to her and said, And you guessed my preferences. I also don't refuse sweets, if, of course, there is an opportunity to buy them. Nikolai realized that he had touched on an uncomfortable topic for her. Well, what are you saying? There will be many more moments in your life when sweets will become an everyday thing. And I'm sorry that I always speak at length. I just don't know what topics interest you. Maybe you could tell me about your mother, how she was treated, why she left this life. Marina took a handkerchief out of her purse and put it to her eyes. You're making me cry again. But it seems that without this we cannot do without a heart-to-heart talk. My mother was called Lyudmila. 4 years ago she was given a terrible diagnosis. She needed expensive treatment and therefore had to borrow money. We fought for a long time, but unfortunately the disease did not go away. The information received from a friend coincided with what Marina had just said. Moreover, her mother's name reminded him of the past again. His first love was also named Lyudmila. Everything was going along the same lines. Now all that was left was to take DNA samples. Nikolai was already internally rejoicing in front of him, his own daughter, about whom he knew nothing at all. At least, these were the thoughts that were in his head now. While Marina went to the ladies' room, Nikolai carefully put her spoon in a specially prepared bag and asked the waiter to bring another utensil so that she would not notice anything. After the cafe, Nikolai walked Marina home. She went into the entrance, and he remained on the street and continued to look after her. It all seemed to match, but if this was Lyudmila's daughter, then the apartment was in a completely different place. When they dated in their youth, Lyuda lived on the other side of the city. In general, to avoid guessing, Nikolai gave DNA samples for examination. He thought that his guesses would be confirmed, and ahead of time, inspired by such news, he began to treat Marina in a fatherly way. And if at first he was cautious, then he began to visit often and bring full bags of groceries. At first, Marina was perplexed by such generosity, but then she got used to it. It seemed to her that the store director was doing it from the bottom of his heart. True, since the conversation in the cafe, she never bothered to ask if he had a family. Nikolai behaved as if he already knew that this was his own daughter. He was thinking about how to provide for her and help her with employment, and the first thing that came to mind was to make her his assistant in business. There was a week left until the desired results. Nikolai, to unwind a little, invited Marina to his home. There he bragged about his luxurious library and collection of rare coins. At dinner, Marina confided, "You know, Nikolai Vasilievich, if my dad were here now, I wouldn't have to go through all the hardships of life. Mom, before she passed away, wished me a soft path, but I must have lost my way." Noticing the traces on her face, Nikolai Vasilievich handed her a handkerchief. "Here, wipe your face. No need to think about it. All the difficulties are behind us. I will make sure that you don't need anything." Marina wiped away the traces and said, It's good that you are helping me. But I don't understand one thing. Why do you need this?" Nikolai almost let it slip, but in response he said, "I just have a kind soul. That's why I help." That day he didn't want to show his cards, but he already felt in his heart that the examination would confirm their relationship. When he had the cherished envelope in his hands, he thought for a long time whether to open it or go to Marina and do it there, in her presence. But something inside him told him that he needed to familiarize himself with the results in advance. Having opened the envelope, Nikolai began to read. Very much little information, which was important for him, he missed. And only when he got to the last line, he almost dropped the envelope. Marina turned out not to be his daughter, and Nikolai spent the first minutes silently coming to his senses. He could not believe that fate had punished him so cruelly. At the same time, he himself had not treated Lyudmila in the best way. It seemed to him that she was not fit to be a wife, so he left her without even giving her a chance to explain. What does he want now? For an unexpected gift to fall into his hands. So it appeared only he needs to use it wisely. After all, fate brought him together with Marina for a reason. After thinking for another minute, he made what he thought was the only right decision. Arriving at Marina, Nikolai gave her an envelope. "Here, it says here that you are not my daughter. I'm sorry, but I knew your mother and didn't say anything until the last moment. I thought that you were the fruit of our youthful love, but it turns out that I am not your father. But if you forgive me and accept me as your own, then I will consider you my daughter. I have no children, apparently. Fate has ordained me so. Now the word is yours, as you say. So it will be." Marina was at a loss, and it took her a good few minutes to collect her thoughts. Holding out her hand to Nikolai, she said, "Let it be as you wish. I also dreamed of a father, and I don't want him to disappear as suddenly as he appeared." Nikolai Vasilievich hugged her shoulders and said, "That's good. I'm overwhelmed with emotions, but I'm glad that everything happened this way. It's true that your mother tried and taught us. Now I'll do everything to correct my mistakes. I have a daughter, and that's the most important thing." A little while later, Nikolai Vasilievich resolved the debt issues, and now Marina doesn't owe anything. They went together to Lyudmila's grave, and soon as Nikolai had planned, his daughter became his main assistant in business. That day, Nikolai Vasilievich came to his parents. It must be said that his mother, unlike his father, was a woman of strict morals. Seeing her son on the threshold of the apartment, she, as is appropriate in such cases, began to lament. "Son, well, how long can I wait for you? After I brought this girl home, I completely forgot about my parents. And, by the way, you yourself said that she is not your biological daughter at all." Nikolai made it clear with a hand gesture that he did not intend to discuss this. "Your opinion is unshakable, but I am a grown man and I will decide for myself what to do in such situations. Her mother and I dated when we were young, and if it were not for you and your father, we would probably still be living happily." Olga Semyonovna took a deep breath and said, "I know my son is still the same stubborn person, but understand, Marina is a stranger to you. Why put an unnecessary burden on yourself?" The son was slightly offended by his mother. "It offends me when you say this. It turns out that any person who visits me, but is not a relative, is easily classified as a burden. Shouldn't you, with your intelligence, know that you should treat people the way you want to be treated? And anyway, what's the point of all this talk? It's only been 6 months since Marina moved in with me. And by the way, I come to see you once a week, so don't say that you've forgotten the way to your parents." Nikolai Vasilievich arrived home in a depressed state, and Marina noticed this right away. She went up to him and asked, "Dad, your face is completely gone. Did something happen?" As if waking up from a deep sleep, Nikolai perked up. "No, my dear, everything is fine. It was just a hard day, that's why I'm exhausted. But don't pay attention, and if you want, we'll go to a cafe. We'll change our daily routine a little and have dinner outside the home." Marina started getting ready, and Nikolai was thinking to himself, "Well, only half a year has passed since we met, and such words as dad and daughter are already ordinary things for me." Oddly enough, Nikolai still shuddered when he was called dad. It was unusual for him, but time does not stand still, and if a person has appeared in your life who calls you that, then you should be proud of it. And the fact that there are parents with a different opinion and are trying to dissuade you from unnecessary fatherhood, well, you shouldn't be offended by them. They just look from the height of their life experience, and they cannot always take into account that fate can present gifts, and sometimes such surprises that your entire understanding of your past life changes radically. Arriving at the cafe, Nikolai Vasilievich tried to distance himself from what his mother had recently told him. He was determined to go all the way, not caring about the opinions of those around him, and he decided for himself that Marina was his own person. It didn't matter that DNA testing didn't confirm paternity. The main thing is what you feel inside, and the rest are trifles that shouldn't be paid attention to. But despite the desire to forget sad thoughts, they still didn't leave him alone. And Marina, trying to somehow cheer up her father, finally became convinced that he brought her to the cafe in order to shake himself up and not let her get bored. Unexpectedly, Nikolai Vasilievich said, "Listen, maybe we should do a general cleaning on the weekend. I haven't sorted out my library for a long time. And you will feel like a mistress. You will arrange everything as it should be." "Whatever you say, it is difficult to live in a house without a woman's hand." Marina finally smiled, because she thought that her father would be sad all evening. The next day he took her to the store and went about his business. In fact, Nikolai Vasilievich left his daughter in his place as director. He did this on purpose so that Marina would get used to responsibility. You have to start somewhere, otherwise she's always an assistant. In fact, Nikolai just decided to rest and collect his thoughts, so that no one would bother him. In the evening he returned, and a couple of hours later, Marina opened the front door. "Dad, you can't imagine. Today's revenue exceeded all expectations. I'm so glad that everything is working out for me." Nikolai Vasilievich hugged Marina and said, "My daughter, I never doubted you." Then he took her to the kitchen and sat her on the table. "Well, I didn't mess around here either and cooked dinner. I hope you like it. And let's celebrate your first day as a director." Somehow 2 more days flew by unnoticed, and the weekend arrived. Nikolai trusted his daughter to sort through his collection of rare coins and stamp albums. He himself decided to remember the past and took out 3 boxes of old photographs. He hadn't wiped them for a long time. They were even slightly covered in dust. While his daughter carefully folded the coins, Nikolai looked at the pictures. And then one photo caught his attention. Looking closely, he felt a pang in his heart. Nikolai knew perfectly well what was written on the back of the photo, but the person in the photo reminded him of something. He turned his head towards Marina and almost dropped the photo in his hands. Confusion and strong excitement began in his soul, but the photo was dated 20 years ago. Nikolai Vasilievich covered his face with his hands and said to himself, "It can't be, but I remember that she had one." Marina came up to him and hugged him by the shoulders. "Dad, sit down on the sofa. You don't look well. Let me put the box away and then I'll tidy it up myself." However, Nikolai did not let go of the box in his hands. "Look, my dear, I haven't been to the city for a long time. How do you like the offer to go to Siberia? There is such nature, such air and forest. You will definitely like it." Marina, discouraged, sat down in the chair herself. "I don't understand. What did we forget in the taiga? Just don't tell me that you were suddenly drawn to natural sources." Nikolai walked a little, and when he stopped, he said loudly, "One good person lives there. I haven't seen him for a long time. I want to visit, and if you don't imagine, then tomorrow we leave. I'll just make a couple of zavonki so that we can leave the store to someone, and that's it. We pack our things and leave in the morning." Interestingly, Marina didn't even ask who exactly they would be visiting there, but she knew for sure that her father wouldn't go to strangers. They managed to leave the city only after a couple of days, because there were some problems with the suppliers. Nikolai Vasilievich did not buy tickets, but decided to go by car. He understood that the road would take a long time, but he seemed even glad that he had the opportunity to unwind. Next to him, on the driver's seat, in an envelope lay several old photographs, including the one that provoked the desire to go to Siberia. With its help, he wanted to find out Marina's exact kinship. At least there was a chance to see her real father. Only Nikolai did not tell his daughter anything about this. He did not discuss the details with her at all. He did not want her to accuse him later, like, "You are deliberately taking me to the new dad to get rid of him." Towards evening, Marina was sleeping peacefully in the back seat, and Nikolai seemed to have become slightly nervous. But suddenly, on the side of the road, he noticed a man who was trying to hitchhike. Having stopped, Nikolai waved his hand at him. "Jump in. It will be more fun together." The man introduced himself as Yegor Petrovich. He looked to be about 60 years old. Nikolai Vasilievich also said his name, but that was the end of their conversation. They drove for several hours in silence, but then Yegor began to tell about his life. It seemed that he was pouring out his soul, sharing his experiences, as if it was not a driver in front of him, but a loved one. Nikolai was moved by him and suddenly asked, "Why did you decide to accept him?" To which Yegor replied, "After all, life gives only one chance, and if you don't take advantage of it, you can lose everything." While they were talking, night approached unnoticed. They had driven a third of the way, and then Nikolai opened up. "I'm in a similar situation now. Only you were able to find a way out of it, and I still have to." It turned out that Yegor's ex-wife had died, and it was about her that he poured out his soul. But just recently a guy came to him and said that he was his son. At first Yegor was surprised and did not believe such news, but when they did an examination, everything became clear. The guy turned out to be the biological son of his ex-wife, and paternity with Yegor Petrovich was not confirmed. It was difficult at first, but Yegor overcame himself and accepted his son as his own. Now they spend a lot of time together, and both are happy, because each has found a loved one. The fellow traveler, looking at Marina, who was still sleeping, quietly asked, "Is it about her that you doubt?" Nikolai nodded his head. "Yes, that's right. I wanted to find out who her father was, but now I've driven a third of the way and I'm thinking, maybe I'm driving again, and there's no need to stir up the past. Let everything stay as it is, especially since we have already gotten used to each other." Yegor gestured to stop him at the turn. "Here we are. Thank you for letting us down. And as for your daughter, you are doing everything right. Don't stop and go all the way, and it doesn't matter what truth you learn. The main thing is that it won't change your attitude towards her." Nikolai seemed to shudder. "That's true. Why did I get myself all worked up? I'll go and find out everything as it is, and then let people judge us." They shook hands and said goodbye. A few minutes later, Marina woke up. Dad, I had a dream that you were talking to someone. Nikolai Vasilievich, without turning around, answered, That's right, you just dreamed it. There were only you and me in the car, and sleep is the best medicine. The next day, their car was driving along the streets of a big city. Marina looked out the window with pleasure at the pedestrians who were walking in large numbers in both directions along the sidewalk. And yet, she was haunted by the fact that they had decided to visit. Marina again turned to her father with this question, to which he answered, Now I myself don't know how they will receive us, although I hope that there will be no incidents. She still didn't understand what her father meant, but half an hour later, Nikolai Vasilievich turned into the yard. Stopping the car at one of the approaches, he took a deep breath and said, I haven't been here for almost 10 years. We had a falling out and never spoke again. Moving to the front seat, Marina asked, Maybe you'll finally tell me where we've arrived. I've only got guesses in my head. Nikolai Vasilievich pulled out the key and the ignition lock and answered, My brother lives here, whom I haven't seen for 10 years. There was a serious fight then, and Vitya said that he didn't want to see me anymore. I won't remember what happened between us. The main thing is that we'll finally see each other now. Having gone up to the 3rd floor, Nikolai ran his hand along the door. Everything is the same. Nothing has changed. Suddenly, footsteps were heard from the other side. Just a second, I'll open it now. Marina noticed how her father's face turned crimson. He straightened his tie and wiped the sweat from his forehead, and when the door opened, he seemed dumbfounded. A woman in a black headscarf stood in front of them. Kolya, is that you? I couldn't get through to you. Apparently the old number is written in the notebook, but you felt like you came yourself. Marina and Nikolai Vasilievich went inside. You'll have to forgive me for not cleaning up. We've just had a great grief. Vitya died in an accident. Nikolai, noticeably haggard, sat down on a chair and pressed his hand to his chest. Lena, the owner of this apartment, brought him some water. After drinking it in one sitting, he said, I didn't think that I would have to go to the funeral of my own brother. I don't know it myself. He didn't even have time to say goodbye. Lena told them that not long before the accident, Victor wanted to make peace with Nikolai, and he was even going to visit him, but fate decreed otherwise. A young guy came out of the room. Hello, Uncle Kolya. He looked at him and smiled tensely. Sorry, Sanka, that I couldn't come earlier. I didn't even get to talk to your father one last time. Nikolai hugged the guy and cried, and Lena cried with him. And only Marina kept herself in hand. She mentally understood that Dad wanted to introduce her and her brother, but then such news. Almost everyone who knew Victor in some way gathered for the funeral. Nikolai didn't say that he had come for other reasons. He only asked for anything that his brother often used as a keepsake. Lena gave the electric razor, and, because Vitya kept it as an expensive rarity, this was enough, and soon Nikolai sent the samples for research. Nikolai and his daughter stayed for another week, and then began to get ready for the return trip. Results: Nikolai decided to wait at home to rethink everything there, in a calm environment. A month after returning from Siberia, he received a cherished letter. It said that Victor was Marina's father. Nikolai accepted the news without nerves, because he said to himself, No matter what the experts say, I will consider Marina my daughter. In principle, this is what happened. And he did not tell her anything. She still considers him her real dad. And recently, Nikolai began to help Elena. He believed that he needed to atone for his guilt before his brother and not leave his family in trouble. That's how they live, Sometimes they come to visit each other, but they meet more often on Parents' Day and holidays. If you like the story, please support me with a like. And to learn about the release of new, interesting stories, subscribe to my channel. All the best to you. Thank you for watching.